a big one for us, especially coming off of a loss. We're going to have a chip on our shoulder. We're going to show it in practice. But, at the end of the day, it's either a win or a loss. So we lost, obviously. So it's back to the drawing board, and, you're not going to hang your hat on moral victories when you lose. We know it's going to be loud. Obviously, it's going to be a great football atmosphere. This is the SEC. This is why we, chose to come and play here.
And welcome back into the Tiger Kickoff Show presented by the Columbia Missourian. I'm your host, Harrison Vapnek from KOMU Sports, joined alongside the fantastic beat writers of the MU football team, Wendell Shepherd, Adam Ryerson, Brandon Haynes. We got a little different style points. I think we're mixing up the shades today. I'm rocking some Adam Ryerson shades today, trying to switch up the mojo after the loss last Saturday. Always looking good. How we doing, guys?
Feel different in these shades, man.
I love the Pit Vipers, by the way. I think that we all need to invest in them.
Yeah, we got 3 of mine, 1 of Wendell's. I feel great in Wendell's. He always looks good. So I don't know if I'm pulling it off like he is, but
Well, speaking of looking good, we saw you on the MUJ School Instagram before the game on the sideline. I think it was our friend Nate Brown who took that picture. How'd you guys decide your fits? Because you guys looked awesome on the field before that game. What went into that?
Mine was actually a late-minute decision. I had my go-to sweater for the little chilly game. Pulled it out, saw a stain on it. Can't wear that, so had to do a little audible, if you will, into something nice. But
yeah, I knew it was gonna be cool. Wanted to wear that sweater. You couldn't see my pants in the picture, but I was like struggling to wear. What color pants am I gonna wear? But I figured it out. So.
Yeah. Well, you got what's up?
Trial and error process each week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always just wear a different outfit for every Tiger Kickoff Show. If you go through every episode, 0 repeated outfits. Go through all of them. Take my word on that. We're always trying to mix it up. As the Tigers are going to look to try to respawn this Saturday against the Kentucky Wildcats over in Lexington. Tigers are 5-1. They should be feeling pretty good, but a double-digit blown lead against LSU might possibly swing the season for the Tigers. They're going to try to beat Kentucky on the road for the first time since 2013. Wendell, we'll start with you. How do the Tigers respond? Because they have the sour taste in their mouths after what happened against LSU, but a whole second half of the season ahead with all SEC games. What's the start on Saturday for them turning the season around?
I think they need to start fast, just like they've done a few times this season on offense. And I think the defense is going to have to play a much better game than they did against LSU. But I think they're motivated. You mentioned the sour taste in their mouths. They have that from last year's game against Kentucky with the controversial punt, refereeing the kicker call.
We'll talk about that later on.
We will talk about that later. But no, I think they respond well, and I think they get a win.
Adam, what are your thoughts on the response for the Tigers and how they will show it on Saturday?
Yeah, Brady Cook said it during Tuesday's pressers. They've got a chip on their shoulder this week. Both teams are coming off of an SEC loss. Kentucky's was a little bit worse. They did have to go to Athens and face a really, really good Georgia team, number 1 in the nation. But both teams are looking to bounce back, and I think the one thing that Mizzou really has to do if they want to have a chance in this game is to limit those penalties and those self-inflicting wounds, because that LSU game could have been a lot different had they not committed so many penalties in such costly positions.
Brandon, what are your thoughts on how the Tigers can, answer the bell? Because they have now high expectations, already at 5-1, could be looking at 8, possibly 9 wins, or the season could turn sideways like it did in 2019, where they were 5-1 and finished 6-6. How do they go into the right direction, not the wrong one?
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz in his Tuesday press conference kind of talked about 4 main areas, but one of the ones I really want to keep keying upon is the turnovers, especially. That's been a spot where Missouri just needs to improve on in general. Brady Cook obviously had those 2 interceptions thrown on Saturday, and while Mizzou's forced turnovers more recently, just need to continue that trend and kind of force those takeaways, because the more possessions you get and take away, the more opportunities you have as an offense to kind of execute. So I think the big thing is just going to be forcing turnovers and kind of winning that turnover battle.
What are some of the matchups we're looking out for in this game? Because I think these are 2 very evenly matched teams. Kentucky is a slight favorite according to the books on Saturday. They're both pretty similar rated in the power rankings. Wendell, what is the one matchup that you think that Tigers can take advantage of and then make the difference in this game?
Brandon mentioned turnovers. I think Mizzou's secondary is going to have to do that against Devin Leary, the quarterback of Kentucky. He's shown some struggles at times with his accuracy downfield. He had some missed passes. He threw a pick against Georgia, had some others that probably should have been picked, and some that fell way incomplete. I think if you can get a turnover or 2, that really helps you.
Adam, what matchup do you think the Tigers may possibly struggle with on Saturday that they're going to have to maybe turn the notch up and then make a difference in the game?
Yeah, it's the biggest difference maker for Kentucky is Ray Davis. He is maybe the best running back in the in the nation. He's definitely one of the best in the SEC. Right now, he leads the SEC with 653 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns to go along with that. He also leads Kentucky with receiving touchdowns with 4. He's a big play machine. He can get it done. He did it against Florida, going for over 250 yards, and he had a 75-yard touchdown where he was just able to break away from everybody. By the time he got to the end zone, there was 5 yards of separation with the closest defender. For a guy who also is able to run people over, Mizzou's front seven is really going to have their hands full with him, and they've been really consistent stopping the run. Up until last week, they were letting up just over 2 yards per carry, one of the best in the nation, and then LSU found a little bit of a vulnerability with them, and were able to run it down their throats. So Mizzou's defense, especially the front seven, is going to have to bounce back in a big way and stop the run this week.
I'm actually going to fire back on you a little bit here. I think that we're overrating the Kentucky rushing offense a little bit because of that Florida game. He had, 280 rushing yards against the Gators, who don't have a great rushing defense to begin with. He has 2 100-yard games. That's including the 271. Cody Schrader, Missouri starting running back, has 3 100-yard rushing games this season. I just think that numbers against Florida kind of inflate how Kentucky's offense looks on paper because it's been pretty inconsistent. Like, they played a pretty similar non-conference schedule to Missouri did, and they did not get through it very easily. But we just look at the Florida game, and it's like, okay, Davis ran for almost 300 yards. It looks like they have a great rushing offense. They're 70th in the nation rushing yards per game. They are very high in yards per carry, which is a completely different stat. But I don't think just the total yards for Davis, you said it's what, 690s?
653.
653. I don't think it tells the whole story because I think a lot of it is just from that's almost half it is from that one specific game. And you mentioned Missouri does have a really good rushing defense. They hadn't been gashed on the ground until Logan Diggs and LSU found something out because essentially Missouri was playing a lot of safeties high against Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Kyron Lacey. They couldn't allow the deep ball open up more rushing gaps for the LSU Tigers. I think it made a difference in that game. I think if Missouri can contain Ray Davis, I think that Kentucky's going to have a lot different answers offensively. They're going to be a lot more reliant, Wendell, you talked about, on guys like Devin Leary and their receivers. Brandon, over to you. What matchup do you have your eyes on for this game?
I think the biggest thing is Mizzou versus itself. Just penalties have been a disaster throughout these past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
You could continue even further than that. But last week, it was 11 penalties for Mizzou. Yes, LSU had 11 too, but it was Mizzou's penalties at critical moments in the game that kind of defined that game. Obviously, that snap infraction, Drinkwitz had a unique answer to possibly disconcerting signals on that final play call.
What were your thoughts on it? Because I heard that in the press conference on Tuesday, and I didn't know what to make of it. What do you make of that comment? Because I could not dissect it. Drinkwitz says a lot of interesting things at the presser, but not very often does he have nothing to say. What were your thoughts on that and kind of dissecting that a little bit?
Yeah, he was obviously holding back, and so I think maybe something on the film. I mean, it was such a big situation in the game. You have to wonder, did LSU do something on the defensive side that made Tolleson jump possibly? But the other side of that is this has been a reoccurring theme with these snap infractions. It's been several times throughout the season, so I don't think you can look too much into it. I think it does say a lot that Drinkwitz kind of held back from saying it and possibly getting fined for a comment about the referees or the officiating and that specific thing in general. But it's those types of situations that Mizzou just has to prepare for against Kentucky. They're going into an environment that's going to be loud, sold out, under the lights in Lexington. It's an opportunity for something similar to happen again. Penalties have been something that's reared its head in this Kentucky-Mizzou series, so that's a big area for Mizzou to focus upon this weekend.
How dare anyone ever criticize officials? What about in terms of making mistakes on the turnover side? Because they've been very good with the football basically until the LSU game where Brady Cook throws 2 interceptions. He also had the fumble that they got back. He had another fumble in the strip sack at the end that they eventually recovered. How do they take better care of the football against what's a pretty good Kentucky defense?
Yeah, I think generally you just got to rely on your decision making. Brady Cook has been proven to be a strong decision maker in the pocket. Obviously, he had an underthrown pass. I'm sure that one's sitting with him. And then obviously the pick six at the end, that was more just a tough situation for him. I think that Mizzou just needs to set him in better positions. And obviously he needs to just take a couple more seconds to think through the process of everything like that. But obviously, just ball security, they've been working on it throughout practice. And on the defensive side, just hitting the ball out when you're rushing the quarterback, kind of just making those contested opportunities on defense. And those are just kind of the keys to, obviously, overcoming that turnover problem.
Yeah, we'll now turn to what our writers are writing about this week in their feature stories that'll be up on the Missourian in the newspaper and on the website on Friday. Wendell, I'll start with you. You're talking about the history of this rivalry, a more recent rivalry since Missouri joined the SEC in 2012. These two have played some pretty memorable contests, but not memorable for great games, more memorable for controversy. Talk about what you learned about the history of these two.
Yeah, Mizzou has lost 7 of the last 8 meetings with Kentucky. Last year's was particularly interesting. I read about what I've dubbed the Will Norris rule, which is a change to the roughing the kicker rule that came from last year's play, where Will Norris tackled the Kentucky punter after the ball got snapped back almost to the end zone, and they called roughing the kicker. That pretty much killed Mizzou's comeback that game. That rule has since been changed. So I talk about that, and just Mizzou's penalties have been an issue for a long time. They've hurt them in some other games that have been controversial against Kentucky. So I talk about that and just how they need to shore up the penalty issues to win some more games.
Adam, you're looking deeper into that Kentucky offense led by offensive coordinator Liam Cohn and quarterback Devin Leary. They got some good weapons there. Dane Key, who had 2 touchdowns last year against the Tigers. Tavion Robinson, Britton Brown. We obviously talked earlier about Ray Davis. What should we know about this UK offense?
Yeah, well, one thing that's pretty interesting is that Drinkwitz actually has a little bit of a history with Devin Leary. He helped recruit Leary to NC State when he was the offensive coordinator for the Wolfpack. And he's talked in the presser about how he remembers the first time that Devin Leary actually went and visited, sat in on meetings. So he has a little bit of experience with him, hasn't gotten to play against him yet. So we'll see if there's a little bit of an edge there. But Leary's been great through the air so far. He is a little bit inconsistent, and his accuracy has been an issue. But Kentucky's top 6 pass catchers are averaging 13 or more yards per catch. So they're able to stretch the ball downfield, and it's something that's going to test a Missouri defense that really struggled against those big plays against LSU, especially down the stretch.
Brandon, you walked into the studio before our show last Wednesday, and you said, "Sorry guys, I'm late. I was on the phone with Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers, because you're doing a story on his brother and current Missouri offensive coordinator, Kirby Moore." Just tell us about Kirby and his journey in football and where he is right now.
Yeah, so Kirby Moore has been surrounded by coaching his entire life. His dad, high school prep coach in Washington, kind of leading Prosser High School through its best days, 4 state championships, 21 league titles under his watch in 23 years. Quite the track record of success. Obviously, we've seen Kellen from the Cowboys, now it's the Chargers. I had an opportunity to speak to both of them, as well as Kalen DeBoer, the Washington head coach, who has
one of the best coaches in the whole country.
Exactly, has had the opportunity to kind of work alongside Kirby. So I spoke to several of those guys, another player that played under Kirby, and just kind of grabbed their perspectives on kind of his journey from where he's come from. Obviously, just growing up in the Pacific Northwest, he's had an opportunity to be around several legendary coaches and work through those opportunities to learn from those guys. And I think it's something that's really carried with him in his success as he's moved forward. And it's just a unique piece, kind of detailing his journey, kind of what he's done, and also hearing from some of the voices that have kind of made Kirby who he is today.
Yeah, can't wait to read all of those great features. Before we get to our game picks, we're doing another fun little segment, not quite trivia, we're not eating, unfortunately. We're doing some Mad Libs, as Adam Ryerson told us before the show. Family road trip.
Oh yeah.
Tradition almost.
Oh, yeah.
This is very funny. Our guy Travis is the best. Vap Libs. I'm going to give you an outcome of this game, and you're going to have to fill in the blank of how it happened. Wendell, I'll give you the easy one out of the gate. Missouri won the game on Saturday. Blank happened.
They allowed less than 120 yards rushing.
Okay, Adam, over to you.
Mm-hmm.
We come in here on Monday. There's our show here, and we're having more questions about Brady Cook. Not good questions. Blank happened.
He had another game with multiple turnovers, whether interceptions or fumbles.
Brandon, we come in here Monday, and we are talking, is this team more, we were talking last week, this is 2013, is this 2019 now, where they were 5-1 to 6-6? Blank happened.
The defense allowed another rushing attack, or just offense in general, to wreak havoc.
Okay, that worked better than I thought it would. I enjoyed the Vap Libs there. Let's do our game picks now. Wendell, turning over to you. Who do you like between the Tigers and number 24, Kentucky?
I spoiled this at the top of the show.
Yeah.
I'm taking Mizzou. I think they bounce back this week.
Why is that any?
I think their offense is better than Kentucky's, and I think their defense can slow them down enough to get an edge.
Adam, who you got?
I think it's going to be a close one. A lot of the games in recent history have been one-score games. I am taking Mizzou. I think that they're going to bounce back, and I think that if you watch the game, it looks like Mizzou might have been a better team than LSU, minus them shooting themselves in the foot. So I think that they're able to bounce back against a Kentucky team, which you mentioned their non-con schedule not the best, didn't really get through it too easily. And I also think Georgia exposed their offense a little bit. So I think if the defense is really watching film, then they should have a leg up in that matchup.
Brandon, who you got?
I'm the lone person on this panel to pick Mizzou every single week up to this point. That trend will not continue this week.
Wow.
Sorry, guys, but I'm going
Kentucky
this week. I think that Mizzou's track record of success just hasn't been there with Kentucky. Last time they won in Lexington was 2013. Obviously, this could be another one of those memorable games where another look back to what that season was. But I just think, as of right now, the rushing attack and everything for Kentucky may just be overmatching Mizzou at a time where they're still reeling up after lost LSU.
You said you're the lone person to pick Missouri every game. I'm the lone person with a 0 next to their in the loss column for game picks. I thought you said it pretty well, Brandon. Missouri has struggled in the past against Kentucky. 7 of the last 8 games, like you mentioned earlier, Wendell. I think that some of the gashes they felt against LSU last week last another week. They go on the road. I think Kentucky does pull this game off. I think they have good coaching from Brad White, their defensive coordinator, who we haven't even mentioned this whole show. I think he's one of the best coordinators in all of college football. Liam Cohen, a great offensive mind. I think them with Coach Stoops, I think they turn the ship around. We talk about Missouri bouncing back. Kentucky is a great program. I think they have a big bounce back after losing to the defending champions. I have Kentucky in a close one, 28-24 to take on the Tigers. Travis, throw it up. I think the last time Brandon and I were on the same side, it was the Kansas State game. It turned out.
Yeah, but the Tigers were both on the outside.
Now it's the opposite end. 6-0, I think. If we get to like 10-0 on that, I think Vegas is going to start calling me and asking for their picks. So should be a fun one Saturday. You guys are hitting the road for Lexington later this week.
Yeah, Saturday morning we got an early one.
For the 6 o'clock game, it's going to be an early morning and a late night. You guys are going to do a great job as always. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tiger Kickoff Show. We'll be back next week to talk about what happened between Missouri and Kentucky and start looking ahead to the Tigers and South Carolina next week. I'm Harrison Vapnek. Thanks so much for joining us on the Tiger Kickoff Show.